Don't go down again. Here, on this windy night, somewhere on a night of never-ending headlights and roads,
What the fuck?
Pluto is waiting down below for you to rise. Down below if he remains in his enclosure. This is how it must be. Don't go down again. Go on. Toward your days, yours alone and no one's. Toward sweeter nights to divvy up with others, like fruit. Don't go down again. Go on. Because rain, because wind in valleys at night, yellow grass, breath, that water raking the alleys and fields. Because there is no truce or tomorrow, only these bars, the cage of an eye. Hell is not being others, watching them slip by and disappear. A parking lot that slowly empties, the wind-blown worksite. Opening your hand, that's the hard part. Releasing something without sacrifice, without deceit. Being the face that fades from you, the wing that flits away, the cry that does not cry for you. This show is full of death. I know you're probably thinking, duh. But let's deep this for a second. This show isn't just full of death. It's driven by death. The entire narrative structure is propelled by various endings, each character arc shaped by who they've had to kill and who they've lost. Walk with me. At the start of season 1, it's Duchesne killing Lester that lands him on the wrong side with Sugar. And it's only under threat of death that he makes a deal to return to London and retake his spot as top boy. Jamie's parents died from cancer, leaving him to care for his 2 younger brothers, Steph and Aaron. He opens season 1 by killing the Turks, to become the de facto leader of the London Fields gang, which sets him up to stand toe-to-toe with Duchesne when he returns. And it's only when Jason dies that Sully agrees to work with Duchesne again, lending him the $10,000 he needs to pay Sugar's deposit. But it doesn't stop there. Each season opens with a major death or multiple deaths. At the start of season 2, Atz's body is found, and the search for his killer spans the entirety of the rest of the season. Emilio's wife, diagnosed with cancer and given months to live, says her dying wish is for Emilio to leave the drug trade business. It's his leaving that puts Duchesne's food supply in jeopardy and forces Duchesne, Jamie, and eventually Sully to travel to Spain and then Morocco. Season 3 opens with Sully and Jack finding the severed heads of their Moroccan connects, which introduces the presence of the Irish. And each season doesn't just open with a major death, but also closes with one too. In season 1, it's Driss. In season 2, it's Jamie. In season 3, it's Duchesne and Sully. No character enters or leaves this series without being touched by death in some way. Even Shelley, as far removed from the action as she may seem, spends season 2 being blackmailed by a woman who knows she helped cover up a murder committed by her ex-boyfriend. I say all of this to emphasize, death isn't just a frequently used plot point in Top Boy. It's the fuel. It's the currency. It's the spark. Now, it'd still be easy to write this off and move on. There's not to make reply, there's not to reason why, there's but to do and die. Into the valley of death, rode the 600. Every top boy knows he will be taken out eventually. It's part of the game.
That's how the streets go. It's our turn to lose the war, I guess.
Well, almost every top boy knows this.
Lose? Nah.
But whether they know it or not changes nothing. Like any fan of the show, I gasped and cried at each death with the best of them. But while rewatching in preparation for season 3, one particular death stood out to me. And that was Driss. This scene in the final episode of season 1 lasts 5 minutes and 14 seconds. It starts with Sully arriving at Driss's flat and ends with Sully firing the shot that kills him. But in between those two moments are countless exchanges the show easily could have forewent. Driss, having betrayed his old friends, knows exactly why Sully has come for him. There's a good 17 seconds of silence as soon as he opens the door. During which several things are communicated without words. Sully gives him the option of where he'd like to die, since Driss's daughter is inside watching television, and Driss tells him,
"Not here, bruv."
And what follows is a beautifully executed death sequence, wherein Sully walks Driss to the rooftop where he will die. 13 Angels Standing Guard Round the Side of Your Bed by Silver Mount Zion begins to play. And there's this humorous, devastating moment.
I didn't even know you wore glasses, bro.
My eyes are fucked. Everything's fucked, bro.
That actually becomes an Easter egg 2 seasons later.
You'll get your glasses today and you'll be fine. I don't want glasses. It's not fair. How come you don't need them? Because I've got good eyesight. You've got your dad's eyes, probably.
And when they reach the rooftop, Sully asks Jack to leave because...
Between us.
And Sully says...
Why?
And it's all just so incredibly intimate, which is how the idea for this video was born. I started asking myself, can death be intimate? Well, evidently, yes. Yes, it can. And that's the mindset with which I watch the rest of the series. Death has the power to foster some of our most intimate moments, with others, with ourselves, and with the dead. A show like Top Boy, where death could easily become a footnote or a cheap emotional ploy, showcases this again and again and again. With such intention and accuracy, it's honestly commendable. The scene of Driss's execution is from an episode called You Don't Know Me, which can easily be in reference to Driss's betrayal. The idea that we can never truly know the hearts and minds of those we're closest to, the lengths they'll go, the things they'll do. But it's the reason we don't know because knowing another person in their entirety is impossible. Earlier, I read a poem by Fabio Pusterla called A Brief Homage to Pluto, in which he writes only these bars, the cage of an eye. Hell is not being others. So is that it? Or is it that we're simply not as close as we think?
Cuz, what's with the gloves?
That our bonds of intimacy aren't strong enough to bear the weight of our truths, dark and ugly as they may often seem. The juxtaposition between Sully and Duchesne's first conversation in season 3 and their last conversation ever showcases this dichotomy pretty well.
I didn't come to me.
Come to you!
Yes, fucking come to me!
Come to you! Ah. What's going on?
It's done, man.
So what? What's all this? What are you doing then? What?
Step back from the road.
I would've give you the money.
You're not giving me shit. You fucking know.
I would've give you the money.
You're lying!
Step back now. When I say you step back.
I thought we were brothers. Fuck off! Fuck off! How about see me on a level? How about I just wanted your respect? How about that?
I do respect you, fam.
Shane. Shane, get up. Hey, get up.
In the first scene, they're posturing, sizing one another up. Sully is capitalizing on Duchesne's weakness, and Duchesne is attempting to preserve his ego. All in all, it makes for very little dialogue. But in the last scene,
Hey!
when Death comes to act as a bridge between the two, all these words come rushing out.
You were right. You can't run this shit without the bodies.
It is often death which loosens the tongue.
Get out.
Deathbed confessions, dying wishes, last wills, and testaments.
Jamie.
For many of us, we can only really say what it is we always wanted to say at the end. It's only after Duchesne is dead that Sully is finally able to climb the wall between them, both literally and figuratively. Death brings together disparate characters, like Sully and Jamie both taking the lives of their best friends, or Steph and Aaron both having a parental figure killed by Sully. So we can start by thinking of death as not just a transformational force, but also a connecting one. In many ways, death is akin to sex, each culminating in a transformation which ideally takes us beyond ourselves, the petit mort, the little death, a moment of utter clarity, a shot in the dark, sometimes too quick to fathom and sometimes painstakingly slow. There's been a lot of discourse recently about the necessity of sex scenes on television, with one side claiming sex scenes have no intrinsic value when it comes to storytelling, and they in fact detract from good storytelling by being exploitative, and one side claiming sex scenes don't need to prove their value, as television is an art form, and whether sex is being elevated or denigrated, freedom of artistic expression must always be protected. I'm not here to weigh in on that particular discourse, though I welcome opinions down in the comments section. But thinking about intimacy led me to ask, when people refer to meaningless sex scenes, are they actually referring to sex scenes devoid of intimacy? Part of the revolution in Hollywood after Harvey Weinstein was exposed and the Me Too movement exposed countless others was the implementation of intimacy coordinators, professionals who ensure the well-being of actors and actresses who participate in sex scenes in theater, film, and television production. They work closely with directors and choreographers to help plan out intimate scenes with the actors and other crew members. But just because there are individuals on set called intimacy coordinators doesn't always mean the sex scenes being filmed are, quote-unquote, intimate. At least not in the way we're discussing today, where intimacy denotes a certain level of emotional honesty and vulnerability. Most of us can tell pretty easily when a sex scene was thrown in just to shock the viewer, titillate the viewer, or fill runtime.
I wanna grab you by the ass while I suffocate you with my I want you to choke on it.
And most of us can also tell when a sex scene reveals something about the dynamic between two characters, or serves as an emotional beat for the story. And of course, in the same way, we can tell when a death was thrown in just to shock us, make the show darker and more graphic, or because the writers couldn't think of another ending. Especially in shows which revolve around violence, death can come to feel gratuitous or without meaning, but not in Top Boy. Which is not to say that all the deaths in Top Boy were created equal. In fact, some of them were kind of stupid, or given almost no weight at all.
Emilio, it's two little girls. Mother-in-law did us on first communion.
But I think we can group the deaths in Top Boy by their emotional intimacy and end up with 3 classes. Class 3, we don't care. Class 2, they don't care. Class 1, we both care, and now I'm crying. And for those Class 1 deaths, boy do they pack a punch both emotionally and narratively. The partnership between Duchesne and Sully has been contentious since the first iteration of Top Boy, now known as Top Boy Summer House, wherein the narrative established Duchesne as the criminal mastermind and Sully as his impulsive right hand. In the revival, Sully is intent on establishing himself independently of Duchesne.
From school days, man. You always said us, but you meant me. You always said it was our crew, but it was always your crew. And anytime you said it was our plan, it was always your plan.
But circumstances bring them back together.
I ain't less than you.
Even so, Duchesne is always pushing his own agenda, and Sully is always resisting falling back into their previous dynamic. Their differences keep them in near constant conflict. Duchesne's use of the police to take down Jamie at the end of season 1 goes against Sully's moral code.
There's always a way. Why not that way?
Sully would rather kill Jamie, while Duchesne sees the young roadman as his retirement plan. Duchesne believes he can transcend road life and use his money to achieve greater feats, while Sully is prepared to die in the line of fire. In the final season, Sully and Duchesne barely speak, and when they do, they are still at odds. In the final episode, Duchesne betrays Sully and steals his food. As Sully hunts him through the estate amidst the chaos of a full-blown riot, he returns to Duchesne's childhood home and finds old pictures of his friend. It's this moment that recontextualizes the hunt and frames what will come next. I mean, keep in mind, in about 20 or 30 minutes, he's about to kill his best friend, who he's known since he was a child, who he grew up with. These moments are scattered throughout the series. In season 1, even as Sully turns down Duchesne's proposition to work together again, he expresses sympathy for his mother's illness.
And I ain't your family.
That's how you feel, yeah?
So about your mom, though, for real.
The idea is that they're like brothers,
We fucking brothers.
tied together by something more binding than friendship,
You just couldn't handle that I was the big brother.
so that even when the friendship is lost or broken,
Hey, get up.
they're still tied to one another. And here's where I want to deconstruct the relationship between sex and intimacy, because you don't need one to have the other. As we've seen, sex can be devoid of intimacy in the same way. Intimacy exists independent of sex. It can come in many forms and can be hastened along or fostered by certain events, like death. So we have two characters alienated by their conflicting goals and methodologies, unable to communicate effectively until the very last moment.
I didn't have no fucking money, did I?
It begs the question, if Duchesne and Sully had been able to have this intimate, vulnerable conversation prior to death's arrival,
What the fuck have you done?
could death have been avoided altogether? Similar to how a well-implemented sex scene can reveal both subtle and distinctive character traits, death scenes can also provide a valuable glimpse into a character's inner world. A great example of this is in episode 4 of season 1, Bonfire Night. When Jason is trapped in a burning house, and Sully is forced to watch him die. You can actually see the moment Sully flips his switch. If you've ever seen The Vampire Diaries, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and turns off his emotions. After this, he's admittedly never the same.
To be honest, Stefan, you done left me a long time ago.
In his relationship with Jason, we saw a softer version of Sully, similar to how he later treats his daughter, Natasha. The show went to great lengths to demonstrate how deeply Sully cared for Jason, for his happiness, for his health, and for his future. It is perhaps Sully's most intimate relationship, where he allows himself to be free and to truly experience joy. After Jason dies, Sully is despondent. He remembers his old friend whenever he sees an Arsenal flag.
If you could have anything, man, what would it be?
To go watch Arsenal play, because they're the best fucking team in the whole Premier League.
To come watch Arsenal?
Yeah.
Alright, it's done.
No.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Smells smoke on his hands and on his clothes, and even in his sleep. He grieves fiercely, but he also goes on to forge a relationship with his daughter. He goes on to rekindle his volatile friendship with Duchesne. He goes on to enjoy a romantic entanglement.
That's what I said.
An entanglement?
Yes. Yes.
A relationship.
Yes, it was a relationship.
The point is, as much as we might like to turn our emotions off in the face of losing those we love, and as much as Sully might like to think he's got none left, it's simply not the case. Here, we see death in its transformational capacity. No, Sully didn't lose his emotions. Rather, his emotions and how he chose to employ them changed. We could even posit, using the concepts we've discussed today, that he became less intimate with his own feelings, removed from the devastating minutiae of joy and grief. Another example of death transforming a character's relationship with themselves is Duchesne and Donovan. At the start of the new revival, Duchesne is living in Jamaica and working at his uncle's car rental shop with his cousin, Donovan. When he kills Lester and makes his deal with Sugar, both he and Donovan are taken to the top of a mountain and taught the brutality of Sugar's mercy. After moving back to London and resuming the drug trade business, Duchesne works hard to find a way to bring Donovan to the United Kingdom, hoping this will ensure he is never used as collateral should Duchesne fail to pay Sugar.
I'm not worried. I know you have this. You never let me down it.
I know. I never will.
But when Donovan attempts to leave his hometown in Jamaica, he's killed by one of Sugar's men, while Duchesne watches. When his mother finds out of Donovan's death, she finally acknowledges what she's denied most of his life. Her son is a drug dealer. And she says in no uncertain terms,
I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed.
And with shame hanging over him, near the end of the same episode, he asks the question,
Is it worth the squeeze? Ever since we were kids, bruv, together, running up and down these streets, trying to get to the top. What for?
For all intents and purposes, this is as existential as Duchesne will ever get. He questions his purpose, his choices, his sacrifices, and whether they were worth making. Sully responds,
What else are we gonna be?
and so we could say death has brought Duchesne to an internal crisis of faith. Who am I? Am I only the product of my circumstances? Am I willing to continue at any cost? What else am I gonna be?
We are not monsters with food. And I could never be food.
Now this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky. And the wolf that shall keep it may prosper, but the wolf that shall break it must die. Regardless of who you believe the ultimate top boy was, what's irrefutable is this. Sully was the top boy. Sorry to those of you who disagree. Sorry to Duchesne.
Sorry to this man.
Sorry to Jamie. Genuinely. Sorry to Jamie. When Sully went out, he went out on top. And it was always going to be that way.
Why?
Why? Why? I would posit it's because Sully was the most truthful about and the most intimate with death. He didn't fear it.
Okay.
He held certain truths to be self-evident.
We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Chiefly, if we are not monsters, we're food. It's another way of saying, kill or be killed. If I do not live, I will be metabolized by the living. If I do not consume, I will be consumed. The truth is, when we die, we immediately become food for all of the organisms living on our body. That's what decomposition entails. So in the most basic scientific sense, he's spot on. The truth is also, when you grow up in a community stricken by poverty and addiction, where violence is commonplace and you are beholden to the whims of a council estate or a hostile government, you face near impossible choices even at an incredibly young age. This is showcased through Ats, a young boy who decides to sell food to help his mother Amma financially. Amma is targeted by immigration services, and despite having been told she could stay in the country previously, and despite having built a life there for over 14 years, she is at risk of being deported. As well, after immigration services reach out to her workplace, she is fired for her citizenship status. Within a year, her son Atz is dead, killed in retaliation for actions he was compelled to commit in his capacity as a drug dealer. Afterwards, devoid of hope, Emma gives up her fight to stay in the country and volunteers herself for deportation. This is one of the saddest sequences of events in the entire show and illustrates Sully's point. Even in trying to fight the good fight or provide for your family, you can so easily be used, abused, and discarded. But his kill or be killed survival of the fittest mentality actually becomes a bit more complex when assessed critically. In popular media, we're used to seeing this mentality depicted in high-powered CEOs and psychopaths. It's a me-first attitude which disregards most socially acceptable forms of behavior and social codes in order to achieve personal goals. Sully wasn't like that. At all. Contrarily, he had a very defined set of social and moral codes. He expected loyalty.
Why are you as angry as I am? Huh? That's what I want to know. If a man fucking bust shots at you, and I know about it, it's fucking mad.
Bruv,
I'm riding that immediately.
Honesty.
I lied to you.
Sorry. You can't fucking lie to me, bro.
And accountability.
Don't do that to me. Let's go. Come on. Come on, man. You know what you've done.
With his body count, viewers tend to think of Sully as a cold-blooded killer. And he is. But he's also not. After killing Driss, he spends the majority of season 2 in a stupor. He returns to the scene of the crime. He self-isolates. When we see him again, his main forms of interaction are conversing with Jack when she comes to drop off his money and feeding a stray fox. It's this moment that really solidified, at least in my mind, the wild brutality and compassion which rules Sully. He is often depicted taking on dependents, like Jason in season 1 and Pebbles in season 2. People who need his strength and protection. In Rudyard Kipling's poem, The Law of the Jungle, he outlines the rules and codes which guide the wolf pack. Though wolves are wild and must kill to survive, even they abide by rules of honor and respect. Remember, the wolf is a hunter. Go forth and get food of thy own. Ye may kill for yourselves and your mates, and your cubs as they need, and ye can, but kill not for the pleasure of killing. And 7 times, never kill man. Sully never kills because he's angry, and Sully never kills because he's been told to kill. He only kills those he deems as his enemies, and those who have broken the rules of engagement. And even then, the act has the potential to bring him no small amount of sorrow and remorse. I focus on Sully because he is the closest embodiment of death. That's what I saw when he came to kill Driss. Calmly knocking on the door, following behind him step for step, asking him to give an account for his sins. The idea that death follows us from the moment we take our first breath until our very last, always just behind, is inherently intimate. It implies that death knows all our secrets.
We're gonna call you Jack, after the best auntie in the world.
And that when we leave this earth, he will keep them for us. Only death knows Lauren named her son after Jack. Death isn't just a physical transformation, the loss of brain activity, rigor mortis, the dying of the cells, but also a metaphysical force. Death shapes reality. It doesn't just entail endings. With every death, one narrative concludes while several others begin. Throughout history, death has been personified, given shape and form so as to live better in our collective imaginations. But this character we call death serves another purpose too, and that's to ascribe motivation to something which so often seems to have none. Why must everything die? It's comforting to think of death as someone who's come to collect you because it's their job and because it's your time. But why is it comforting? Because it introduces the prospect of intimacy. If death is nothing but the cessation of certain biological processes, then what? But if death is someone come to take your hand, then at least you're not alone. Sully's arc in season 2 is the perfect look into an individual's relationship with both death and the dead. He meets a woman by the name of Delphine, who immediately upon meeting him recognizes he is in mourning.
You lost someone, didn't you?
She has lost her son.
I don't think 10 minutes go by without me thinking of it.
Through this shared grief, they forge a connection. And in his vulnerability, Sully is able to discuss how killing affects his mental state.
It's like all this noise is in my head. It just don't ever go away.
Now that could just be cognitive dissonance, but sounds more like grief to me. If Top Boy is driven by death, it's defined by grief. There has to be over a dozen scenes of characters just looking at pictures of people who have passed away. Jamie looking at pictures of his parents, Duchesne looking at pictures of Donovan, Steph looking at pictures of Ats. The motif of the bench, where the Tavo boys go to celebrate their late parents' birthdays, is set up pretty early in the series. It's a ritual, one that stays even once Jamie and Aaron have gone. In season 3, Jamie's chain and iconic blue North Face jacket are kept by Steph and come to represent his connection to his brother and his brother's way of life. There are so many examples in Top Boy that speak to the presence the dead can have in our lives even once they're gone. There's this intimacy, bringing it back around, with the dead that suggests they're not really gone. I mean, they say you die twice. One time when you stop breathing, and a second time, a bit later on, when somebody says your name for the last time. So all of these little rituals, looking at pictures, returning to special places, telling stories about and speaking to the dead, wearing their old clothes and jewelry and relics, in essence are ways of keeping those we love alive. And not just alive, but close. It's this connection to our dead, our ability to mourn and remember, to return to the places where our dead linger, that ultimately defines our humanity. In Sully's case, being unable to save Jason, and having killed his old friend Driss himself, his grief is muddled by guilt, and he doesn't really resolve those feelings either, but rather ends the season choosing to stay in London to continue developing a relationship with Tasha. And when he comes back in season 3, he's not the same Sully we left behind. He's succeeded a bit more in cutting off those emotions and getting down to business. This video was originally called Top Boy, What We Can Learn About Death, in the vein of my other video, Fleabag, What We Can Learn About Love. But as it turns out, what we can learn about death is what we can learn about life, and what we can learn about life is what we can learn about love. It's all connected. Dreams become reality, and reality becomes a dream. We usher in the new, and some of us do not grow old. There's pain, there's pleasure, lies give way to the truth, and people break promises. But even so, even with all of the needless suffering and asking why, we keep engaging with life. Because we know it's finite, and one day it will be over. I didn't want the takeaway from this video to be, live each day like it's your last. I didn't want to evoke images of lavish spending sprees or jumping out of airplanes, because the truth is, if we knew today was our last day on Earth, many of us wouldn't go anywhere at all. We might write down our thoughts in a last-ditch effort to say something we never could before. We might make that call to someone we haven't spoken to in years. Or we might brew a cup of tea, sit outside, and enjoy the sun one last time.
When the planes hit the Twin Towers, as far as I know, none of the phone calls from the people on board were messages of hate or revenge. They were all messages of love.
Fyodor Dostoevsky, the author of Crime and Punishment, was arrested for his participation in a literary society which discussed books that had been banned in Russia. He was sentenced to die by firing squad on December 22nd, 1849. Ultimately, Dostoevsky was spared by the Tsar of Russia and instead sentenced to spend 4 years in a Siberian labor camp. At his first opportunity, he wrote a letter to his brother Mikhail, which read in part, "Brother, I am not despondent, and I haven't lost heart. Life is everywhere. Life is in us, ourselves, not outside. There will be people by my side, and to be a human being among people and to remain one forever, no matter in what circumstances, not to grow despondent and not to lose heart, is what life is all about. That's its task. I have come to recognize that. Dostoevsky's supposition that the task of life is not to grow despondent, not to be jaded, not to kill off parts of ourselves, and not to lose heart is one I agree with. In Summer House, what is always most miraculous is the ability to maintain a soft heart. In a world defined by death, this is the greatest testament of strength. It is the ultimate defiance.
Not worth it.
There is a last time someone comes home. A last kiss, a last hug, a last argument, a last reconciliation, a last every mundane thing, only you'll never know while it's happening. While we're falling in love, eating dinner, making money, making memories, making up, death is all around us and with us. And so the task isn't to live forever or to avoid death's grip either, but rather to cozy up to death and its embrace. To recognize death's presence for the vivifying enrichment it can be, and to recognize there is still an opportunity to impact people, to forge deep, meaningful connections, to love and to be intimate, not in spite of death, but because of it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.